Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today this AK is going to be turned to HPA on this installation video for the Scalar Airsoft Seraph HPA engine. Hey guys, and welcome back. If you do enjoy this content today, please do like, comment, and subscribe. All my socials are down on the link tree down below. Channel memberships on the join button down below. Totally optional, really appreciated. All the usual gubbins. Let's move on quick because we're all excited for this. So, full disclosure, I am absolutely bricking my pants because I've never done this before. And I'm kind of pooping it a little bit because it's totally new to me. So, you know, if you ever get nervous while doing tech work, totally don't worry about it because I am absolutely babbing my pants. So I'm just going to get a plastic bag just to put the greasy parts on that are going to go out with this. So we've got my gearbox out of my double bell AK Ames. Basically, we are stripping everything out of this other than, excuse me, the air nozzle and the cylinder head and the trigger and the cut-off lever. So obviously I've already stripped it down to this point. I'm just going to remove the selector. There's not an awful lot of this that we sort of need to keep, which is quite nice actually, that, you know, we are significantly reducing the complexity, I suppose, to an extent of what's going off in here. You know, the MOSFET's even going to go, the motor's going to go as well. Like, this is like crazy how much is like sort of going out of here. And so get your gearbox stripped down and out. I will cut to basically where I finished mine, where I've got everything out of it, and we'll pick up a little bit there. Okay, so I've stripped it down, I've stripped the gearbox of everything. So what I've done is I've got some spares. The eagle-eyed will have noticed that there was a MOSFET in here, so I've managed to pillage a few spares from my spares box. So I've got the original two-part trigger with the spring. I've got a cut-off lever and a appropriate selector plate that controls the cut-off lever as well. So we're now ready to install the engine. So the engine itself then, we've got obviously the main body of it. What we need is some of the little bits that are over here. So I'm going to go to this little bag of bits. So I've got my rather spiffing Scalar Airsoft patch in there. Put that to one side for now. I've got a tappet plate spring, which I need. I've got the tappet plate that they've, I believe, 3D printed, which we need separately. We've then got a bunch of spacers and screws and things. So first of all, I'm just going to get out, there's a little spring and a little sort of what I call like a spring retainer. So it is flat on one side. Mine is ever so slightly textured. So on one side it's flat, but then it's kind of got like an angled edge on the other side. That angled edge is the side that comes out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this up. I'm just going to drop this spring into that middle bit there. And then I'm going to drop this retainer on top like that. Now this is going to be a bit of a balancing act. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put those to one side a second. We're going to bring in our, I can get it separated, our cylinder head. I'm going to put our cylinder head in the into the engine. Now, if it goes in and there is a bit of play like there is there, the guide says that it's perfectly acceptable to put a loop of PTFE tape around it, that it should be a really snug fit, that it should take some real effort to push it in and seat it, and it shouldn't easily just slide back out. So I'm just going to grab my PTFE tape. Here's one I prepared earlier. Just going to loop that round there. You need as good a seal as possible, obviously, to help with the, let's not cover that hole in there. And what I'm doing is just neatening that out so it's not sort of over the hole. Now, I'm going to put that back in. Put the little plate on top. And that is going to be a real balancing act. No. You're about to witness Pheas getting pretty annoyed. Now, if you are building this into like a version 6 and like a P90, it says to not put the little black spring retainer in. It says to leave that off. So like basically anything that's got an offset nozzle, so this is a center based nozzle, anything with an offset nozzle, basically you don't put that retainer plate in. Down a second. This spring is proving to be a pain. There are I can't even get hold of it. I'm going to go and have a minute, compose myself. I'll be back in a second once I've got this in, but we are basically just going to stand the spring up in there and put that in on top. I did discover there is a tiny little lip inside. When it zooms in, there is a tiny little rim, so if you very carefully push in, it will actually click together. So it does then make this significantly easier, because what I can do then is I can then stand that upside down. I've re-neatened, you probably noticed I've neatened up my PTFE e-tapers, and then I lose it and it just rolls away like that. It's a quick, easy find, fortunately. So let's get that back on there, located where I want it, which is in the, obviously the exit hole in the cylinder head. I'm then just going to lower this down on top, making sure that I don't tip that too far, so I'll lose it. And it is just a case of positioning it so that the spring stays central to there and that the retainer goes into that central part of your nozzle there. Bear with me. So I've got that inserted now, that's sat in there. So I'm just going to check the lining up in the shell. So I'm just going to drop that into place there. So what I'm looking for is that obviously the lugs or lug holes in the cylinder head sit still, that the sort of piston cylinder even is not far enough forward. I can see there that it should be a bit further forward, because the retaining, this part here, there's matching one on there, should be sat inside this. So I can see there that I need to pull that a bit further on. What I might need to do is redo my PTFE. I think I've overdone the PTFE a little bit. I've created too much of an issue there. So I'm going to redo that so it sits. So what we should find is that the front of the cylinder and this latch here should sit perfectly in this hole there and flush. Okay, so you probably noticed a slight change of view there. My camera's fallen over. I'm having a bit of a mess. So basically what I realised was, dawned on me, that the pad on this double bell stock cylinder head, when I compare them, is significantly thicker than a stock. So side by side, there we go, lines that up. It's significantly thicker. So with the springing that you've got to have on the retainer, it just wasn't basically going in. So fortunately, because it's me, I've got significant numbers of spares. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to PTFE this up, because I've checked and it's a little bit loose, not massively, but if I can improve the seal, I want to improve the seal. I want the best sort of quality seal there. So I'm just going to neatly PTFE this up and then rebuild it. So I'll be back in a second to show you what's going off. So now that's installed and I'm sort of eyeballing it just to get it lined up. So I'm just going to drop it back in there. So just to show you what I'm looking for. So what I'm looking for is, I'm just about perfect there. Just manipulate it a little bit further in. So I'm looking for, there we go, that the cylinder lines up flush at the front and this retaining bit sits flush at the back there. So I know that that is lined up and we're in business. So I can take that back out for now. Excuse me. Next thing I need to do, because this is a version 3, is in one of the kits there is a retainer, so I'm just going to check through the parts bit and make sure I've got the right retainer, the right spacer, and then show you where to move on to next. Now that's lined up, before we can move on, we need to get, there's a spacer in the kit. You need to put the spacer down on the sort of nozzle tube on the cylinder head. If you don't, what you run the risk of is that when the tappet place is in place, the piston that's on this screw here will basically come out too far and not seal, and it could cause issues where basically it may not be able to go back into its bore to get back forward to obviously do the next shot and things like that. So we have to make sure that the spacer goes on there ready, oops, excuse me, so that we are in a position where we're not going to cause issues with our engine. So I was not prepared for the complexities of this. It's actually a lot easier. So what I've had to do is just quickly swip out, realised an issue, just sort of pre-checking things before I talk you through it, realised that there was an issue with the cut-off lever I had, that this particular notch here was not basically deep enough to engage with the trigger board, which is what we're going to bring in now. So this is our trigger board. Now what we do need to do is be particularly delicate with this, because this particular one says in the manual, be careful not to break that. This is important. So when the cut-off lever comes down, obviously we're putting it into single shot, it's activating that actuator, that switch, to let it know that it should be auto or single shot. So we're going to drop that in place very delicately. There is a provided screw, which is a small Phillips head, so I'm just going to get that, I'm going to delicately put that in place. So we're just going to screw it in right there. So I can see now, if I move my selector, and I can get a hold of it. Where's it gone? There we go. Off, and then it's pushed back on and off. Not very moving, is it? I need to check. There we go. That's better. So it obviously can actuate that properly. I'm going to put a slightly, I think I'm going to find a slightly better spring for that. But then we're ready then to wire in the sort of, I think it's the poppet and the two connectors onto the board, as well as the wiring to come out of here. And then I'll explain the next part from there. I am feeling the stress and pressure now, but we're getting there now. We're actually on a good place. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the sort of cabling ready to go onto the trigger board. Now it does say in the manual that one side has there's less protective sleeve. So basically, if you look, there is, bring that up, that's got less protective, that's got more, that's got less, that's got more protective. So basically the one with the less protective, that's the one that we're going to wire to the trigger board. So I'm just going to lift this up. So there is little notches on the side of this, and there are little slots in here. So this will only go in one way. So please don't force this, because you're obviously going to damage the connector and board. And just going to wiggle that in until it clicks into place. Now, what I've chosen with this one is, because this is a one where the battery sits on top of the gearbox, I've chosen the, I think it's the short wiring. So I'm just going to feed that through there when it's time. And that's going to loop like it traditionally would with the wiring round the front of the gearbox and on top. Then we've got two more sockets. We've got J3 and J2 labelled up. So what we're going to do is just looking for the markings. J2 and J3. So we're going to wire the other connectors onto our board. Now on the version 2, we've got, on the version 2 board, we have got, oh, actually I'm just saying, I don't know. So we've got labelled up as J3 and J2. So I'm going to assume, based on the pictures in the manual, that basically J2 is going to be the poppet wiring, excuse me, and J3 is going to be the nozzle wiring. So let's have a look. So it says in the manual that the nozzle solenoid is located on the right hand where it says Seraph, and the poppet is on the left. So this is our nozzle on this right hand side. So let's just double check that. So J3 is our right hand side one. So I've got socket J3 is here. So this right hand side one wiring is going to go to our J3. So that is, again, there is only really one way that this can and should go in. So I'm just going to be very delicately, in fact I'm going to have to mount that in the gearbox first because it needs that screw to be in. So I am going to have to mount the trigger board down. So I'll mount that in there. What I'm going to do is, as I'm just going to lay those down and manipulate those, I'm going to pull the cut-off lever up a little bit so it's not engaging with that switch. Perfect. I'm then going to bring in the little screwdriver. Now this screw was provided with the bag of screws, but you also could have used the one that came from the trigger block assembly as well. Beg your pardon if my head is in the shot. Okay, so I can see then that my cut-off lever is nicely engaging with that switch. I've got that mounted down, that wiring comes out. So at this point then we might as well start. So the right hand side is going into J3. So looking at that, there are notches on the side of that thing which come to the top. Just need to very delicately get that in. And then the other one, J2, is the poppet. Again, those little notches need to be at the top. So it should be, as you're looking down on it, the red connector should be on the left, the black on the right, left and right. So that is now wired in. So what I can do is I can run those out of the way. We will bring in now our air nozzle. So I'll put the air nozzle on, which goes back. Got our tappet plate, and we've got our tappet plate spring. And we're just going to hook that around the tappet plate. Now it does need to be their special made one because this hook is extra on the back, and that does need to engage with the back of the piston that comes out the back of the engine. So I'm just going to hook that round there like that. I'm going to click that into the nozzle like that. I'm going to bring it all forward and hook the tappet plate spring on the post as we would normally. And then seat it all back in. Make sure that that comes forward so it sits flush, and it is sitting flush. Perfect, that's sitting in there. That's sitting in there. Mechanically, that's moving. Now, what it does say is to look in this gap in here, where this tappet plate should go up against the nozzle. And if you can see a little bit of a gap, which we sort of can, what they do is they include a couple of shims as well to basically put on the end of that screw. So I'll just pull that back out again and just show you that. So you're assessing the gap in there at the back. Now I did have a bit of a gap. Obviously I've got a spacer at the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift that out of the way. Take that off there. I'm going to put those two spacers on that screw. There goes one running away. And again. There's one. There we go, and they're both on there now. Perfect. So I can now bring my tappet plate back in, nozzle to the back. Latch that on there. It's a real juggling act, especially when I'm trying to do it in the air, floating for camera as well. That's plugged in. That's in place. There we go, the engine's all in place. So now there is a lot less gap as those spaces are in there. Let's take up some of that space. The last thing we've got to do is to obviously, first of all, is to route our wire down through the bottom, which we'll talk about more in a second. It's just sort of like that. And then we'll obviously have to do that as going in. But what we are going to do is we're going to very delicately fight with our AK trigger spring. So I'm just going to hook that in its right position there. I'm going to put the two parts together. I'm going to hook that over there. There we go. Now, that's moving all right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull, bend that down out there. I'm going to bring the top of the gearbox in and drop that into position. Okay, so just checking that it's gone flush, which it has. It wasn't ever a perfect seal, even when it was the gears in there and stuff. So I am quite happy with that. Let's get that bit of sticker out. There we go. There we go. So I'm now going to sink the screws back in the order that they came out, and then we'll move on. I've got the screws back in, so I'm just going to mechanically check that everything's free moving in there, and I can see that it is free moving in there. That's nice and easy. The trigger moves, it's not catching any of the wiring. I'm looking in there, everything's sat nice and flush. I need to bring the top part back in. So we are ready to proceed to the next stage of assembly then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the motor cage on. I've got switched to a different motor cage because I've left the other one intact with its motor in place. This one is obviously going to be different. Now this will go on here, and I'm going to feed this tube through the top of the motor cage and out, which is obviously a little bit different to what we are used to with an M4 variant. Now the sort of real, I suppose, issue here with an AK is that we can't use the screw hole at the bottom. So at some point after this assembly, I'm gonna have to drill a hole inside of here to allow this tube out of the side, so then I can mount this back on here and get that on there and operate it. For now, I'm going to assemble it as is and leave the pistol grip off for now, because I still need to put my Foster's connector, my US Foster connector on there to obviously get this back together again. So I'm just going to put the parts together, and then I'll be back in a second. Okay, just to show you then that the connector is now on. So we are ready to move on to the next stage. I am absolutely bricking it now. So what we're going to do is we're going to wire our FCU onto the wiring loom from the trigger board. So the slots are at the top. The connector will obviously, it should only go in one way. So we'll pop that on. We're going to wire up our battery now. There is our teeny tiny little battery. with its, I think it's a JXT connector. Apologies if I'm wrong. And then we've got Scalar, shooting, profile 1. We've got our thing up. Let's bring in our tank. So I've set this at approximately, it's just over 70. Let's dial it up a tiny bit. I was reading that sort of about 80, we'll start at about 80 psi and go from there when we're testing. Wrong way, I need to go up. So 60, 70, there we go, about 80 psi. I am super nervous. Here we go then. So line goes in. And line goes in. So we are in shooting. Something's obviously it's not cycling the something's gone wrong because my pressure has dropped to 0. Let's troubleshoot. I assume because it's not had a line in, I thought I'd set the pressure. I assume possibly need to have the hose in. Please comment down below on that because I'm total noob to this. So I did notice that the pressure was down at 0, so I just adjusted it back up again. So I've put it to just over between 70 and 80 psi. We've got the battery back on, and now, okay, so now that I've seen it's working, I'm going to rebuild it and see if I can get it shooting. I am pretty excited to, oh my God, I am so excited. Back in a second. So after much troubleshooting, we're back, and we've now got a much improved, but actually there is like a bedding in period, and at the minute that's what the engine's going through. You can see the FPS is going up and it's getting more consistent. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.